Hello, and welcome back around the Bonfire. It is the show really answering the question, how many episodes can we put out in a single week? This is 1,000,000% a record, but hey, it's exciting to be here. You're getting more content than you know what to do with this week, I guess.
You know what? Tune in tomorrow, guys. No, we're not doing an episode tomorrow.
Well,
I'm just going to upload an episode tomorrow, and it'll just be me yodeling. That's what our next episode is going to be.
Okay, if there's an episode posted on Saturday, don't listen.
Wait, this is going to be posted on Saturday.
Oh my gosh. Okay, we're going to get back on track here. It's exciting to be back as we for the first time in the history of this show, and I would argue maybe any Chicago Fire podcast. I don't know if they were doing podcasts in 2017.
They existed. You actually downloaded them to your iPad, to your iPod. I remember those times.
To your iPod Touch. Yeah, you would. Oh my gosh! All right, we're not going back to iPod Touches.
Not iPod Touches. I legitimately mean like at this point, like most people just had the iPod with like the wheel thing.
In 2017, Tim.
In 2009, if we're talking about a playoff win,
yeah, 2009.
we were not discussing a Fire playoff win in 2017.
I mean to say we're previewing a Chicago Fire playoff game, a playoff, round one proper, as opposed to a play. Okay, you know what? We're moving on. It's great to be here. The weather in Chicago has turned, and hopefully that will come to play an advantage. Chicago Fire
good.
Take on.
Talking about the weather, that's definitely the engaging content our listeners are here for.
The Chicago Fire are set to take on Philadelphia Union in the first round of the MLS Playoffs starting this Sunday, October 26th in Chester, Pennsylvania. Talk about a stupid name for a city. It's exciting. As you can tell, I've got the whole gang with me today. Tim, John, Alan, DJ, Austin, who is listening back to this, wondering when we're actually going to start talking about things.
We are never going to talk about anything, Austin.
You know what the thing is about Chester, though? The stadium has a beautiful, like a view, like a vista of a bridge. I still don't know what bridge views, like what the view is, like what the bridge is that you're supposed to view from Bridgeview, Illinois. I'm not 100% sure.
It's the stretch of road that goes slightly higher than the stadium and then comes back down. It's not a bridge, but it resembles a bridge vaguely, and you get stuck on it for an hour every time you go there. Anyway, let's hop into the news, guys. All right, let's hop into the news. Maybe some really exciting news here. No, it's not about the team. No, it's not about some kind of exciting player acquisition or stadium development.
Well, it's not about the team.
Okay, Tim. God, this guy.
Friday night podcasts.
What are we doing? He was dunking on me about his MLS ballot. Now he's doing all these other things. This guy's crazy over here.
I know how I felt.
Yeah. No, but very exciting news. This Sunday, it's a 4:30 kickoff for Chicago Fire against Philadelphia Union. And we are so excited to formally invite you all to come join us at the Endeavor Health Fire Pitch for a special live watch along and episode of the Bonfires. We'll be kind of commentating and giving our ideas throughout the game online, and then recording an episode immediately after. There's a lot of moving pieces here. The plan may change slightly. I would highly recommend staying tuned to socials, but we would love to see as many people as possible out. There will be some alums around. There will be some really exciting stuff that the club is getting ready to announce here shortly. So we are super, super excited to be a part of that. Alex Campbell from CHGO will be joining us. We're super excited. It's going to be a blast. Special thanks again to Endeavor Health Fire Pitch for putting that on and having us. We're super excited about it and ready to roll.
Yeah, we don't have a lot more details than that, but we're hoping you enjoyed as much as we do doing it. Come say hi to us. When we're not maybe recording or like talking about things on air. So there's but still a lot of moving pieces, but we think that it'll be a fun night. We think that it will be more fun with you there in person. And if you can't be there in person, we think it'll be fun having you watch along.
Yeah, and if nothing else, it'll be really exciting to have as many people as possible packed into Fire Pitch to watch what we all expect is going to be a victory, I'm sure. But let's actually get into the meat and potatoes, the nitty and the gritty. Gritty 6-7.
I'm out. I'm sorry.
Okay.
I'm done. I'm out. I can't do this.
We're banning John from the podcast. John, you're banned from the podcast. Alan, take over.
Us getting off of the rails within the first 5 minutes is not unusual. Us never having been on the rails,
bold of you
weird.
to assume this is a train.
We're in the sky and we're about to crash.
Let's get into our breakdown here, fellas. So we'll talk a little bit about just to kind of set the table, the two times these teams have faced off already this year, 6 points went to Philadelphia Union in two matchups, unfortunately. The first time around at Soldier Field, Chicago Fire looked like the better team for large swaths of that game. Philadelphia Union came out on top 1-0 in a game where I think we all kind of felt like the Fire could have won and a little bit chose not to. Second time around, a different story. Philadelphia Union putting the hammer down, Chicago Fire losing 4-0. That was a rough game for the back line, specifically the right side of that back line, unfortunately. And with all that said, those 6 points contributed to Philadelphia 66 points on the year, Shield winners. I don't know that that's a season that would impress Caleb Porter, but we are impressed by it. 20 wins, 57 goals. They are in a bit of a weird spot. And fellas, this is where I kind of want to start us off. The vibes for these teams, I think, are in two different places. Philadelphia, I think, feeling great about winning the Shield. But you look at their last month or so, they had a 7-0 loss to Nashville and a 6-0 win against, I believe, DC United. A little bit up and down, a 2-0 loss to Charlotte on decision day. They're missing Quinn Sullivan to a torn ACL as the Fire are Andre Franco. The Fire coming in, obviously a massive win over Orlando. Spirits couldn't be higher. Guys feel like they can punch the world out. I don't know how to say it. Tim, from a 30,000 feet in the air, how are you seeing this matchup going into game one specifically?
It's definitely going to be teams in very different places. I'm just not 100% sure where all of those places are. Like the Fire had more points over the last 5 games of the season than the Philadelphia Union did. I mean, that's because the Fire didn't have a loss in the last 5 games. And when you look at the Union's record, like they made it to win the Supporters Shield, which is impressive and hard to do, but they did it by beating teams that ultimately didn't make it into the playoffs, along with a few others here and there. Like the Fire were the second last team that made it to the playoffs that they had a win against. They had a 1-0 win against FC Cincinnati the week later. No wins against playoff bound teams in September. Like they didn't have. I think they just had one other than those two in like through August. Like they've been beating teams that are not great. Matt Doyle's been calling them flat track bullies all year. I think that's maybe a little extreme, but look, respect to them for getting wins where they should, but it's not like they have been making really good teams look amateurish. And I think that the Fire are a different team than they played like in that last one, and certainly a very different team than they played like in that first one. It's just it's been a year of growth for the squad.
As I mentioned in the last episode, Greg has made several changes to the formation, whether it was to the back 3 and then back to another back 4 with the departure of Andre Franco. I agree essentially with Tim. This is a different Fire team, not only in terms of strategy, in terms of formation, but like how John mentioned, in terms of vibes. I mean, the Fire coming off of what was a dream night at SeatGeek Stadium on nearby Mount Bridgeview. And if Greg Berhalter and that team can take those vibes, those strategies to Chester with the way that the Fire have proven all season long how they can play on the road, anything is possible. Anything goes.
And that's true in MLS, right? Like, it's something that Bradley Carnell mentioned. It's something that I think every Philadelphia head coach or front office exec has to mention as a part of their contract of saying the league has parity, which is normally a way of excusing them from not spending at the high end, even when they're really close to trophies and have consistently fallen just short. Other than this being their second Supporters Shield, which, full respect to that. But, I think that there's a lot of truth to that. And it's a coach that has coached 2 teams at the top of a conference in 3 years in MLS and has won 0 postseason games in that time, right? But the Union have, I think, a stronger DNA of knowing exactly how they're going to play than any team in MLS, other than maybe the New York Red Bulls. But the Red Bulls are kind of experimenting away from that. And this year was the Union stripping it back and going back to that sort of very Red Bull-esque, direct counter, intense soccer. And you see it from guys that have been in the squad that were brought in, like Ty Baribo, but just the kids that are coming up through the academy, they have it drilled into them from the time they're 13 years old. And it's a level of intensity that I think a lot of teams struggle with, just with how deeply they believe it and feel it.
An interesting point you bring up there, Tim. This idea of Philly has a very distinct style. They know how they want to play. And what we've seen, I think, from Greg Berhalter, especially in the last month or two, is I think that the core values of the system are the same, right? Which is creating overloads, mismatches, and getting the ball in transition and playing to that. And winning set pieces is obviously a huge part of how the Fire play. But he seems to be a lot more fluid in doing it, right? And we've seen Bradley Carnell not perform the way he should in the playoffs, right? From a coaching perspective, even with another team that finished top of the table in their conference, right? Not too long ago. There's a reason he's coaching Philadelphia Union and not St. Louis City, right? Do we feel like, and this is kind of where I would like to start us a little more in depth. Do we feel like a best of three here in some ways could benefit the 8 seed, which is obviously the opposite of the intention, because the Fire can be a little bit more multiple in how they play, right? And just in terms of what they can bring to a game on any given day, you could probably see 5 or 6 different people hypothetically starting or featuring heavily in the midfield. You could see multiple center backs. You could see 2 center backs. You could see a lot of things, I guess is what I'm saying. Do you think that bodes better over the course of 3 games as opposed to a one-off?
Bradley Carnell mentioned the switch that Greg Berhalter has made and how it makes it a little bit harder to game plan for them. But, the Union, but his message was ultimately like, look, we know how we're going to play. And so we don't really care how they're going to play. And every coach will say some version of that at different points. But like, you can just tell, like, there's some guys that mean it more than others. And he means it a lot. At the same time, it's been, 2 years of playoffs have happened in the structure. This is the third. One team's advanced from the wild card past the number 1 seed in their conference each of those years. We saw Atlanta doing it past Miami last year, and the year before it was Bradley Carnell, St. Louis City that were knocked off by Sporting Kansas City. Small sample size. Everyone thought that the best of 3 was brought in to give advantage to the big teams. And maybe what it kind of does is it gives underdogs a little bit more freedom, because you can lose one game, and as Greg pointed out when I asked him about the format, it's the next game starts 0-0. It's not a home and away. Like, the away goals don't matter. It's not aggregate goals. It's just you start 0-0 in the second game. So you can afford one mishap and still outperform in the others. And that may, in theory, be better for the better team. But what we've seen, I think, is that it means that teams that have nothing to lose and play like they've got nothing to lose can come up with unexpected results.
Yeah, that's exactly the thought there, right? And you have to think. You mentioned, the kind of being referred to as a flat track bully, right? A downhill team, if you want to say that, if they are impossible to climb back on. I think the one positive from the Chicago aspect of this, right, is 2 things, right? And I'll kind of preface this by saying the Fire have not played Philadelphia even before fully healthy, right? Neither of those games were with your ideal center back pairing. Neither of those games were with your ideal midfield trio, right? Although technically that 4-0 loss was Davila, Gutierrez, and Argel, but that was not what we have seen recently from Davila. Certainly not what we've seen recently from Brian Gutierrez. You're getting Joel Waterman back into the mix. You're getting much better defensive play
into
from
the mix, right? Like, he wasn't in the squad at that point, right? Like, and that was a huge issue for the Fire, especially in that 4-0. It wasn't any one part. They were losing battles all over the pitch, and Berhalter said that when we talked to him on Friday. But it's like, certainly having 2 good, reliable center backs that have developed some amount of chemistry, not a whole season's worth, sure, but some amount of chemistry and can rely on each other, and that Brady can rely on, and everything else. Like, that is something that the Fire did not have when they last met Philadelphia.
Yeah, a far more competent back line for a team that is going to be pressed, right? That's what Philadelphia wants to do. They want to win the ball back and counterattack. And now you have 2 players in that center back pairing who can handle the ball confidently. We've seen Jay Davila grow in terms of what he's able to do with the ball at his feet and in receiving and advancing the ball. So I do think that changes the outlook here. The thing I'm curious to hear from you guys about, do you see this as a back 3 game or a back 4 game? I think there's cases for both. Certainly, being on the road in game 1, you want to score early, right, to keep Philadelphia from getting ahead. You also probably don't want to push your luck. Where are you guys falling on the spectrum there?
I can say that Greg Berhalter was certainly hinting that the back four was here to stay in the press conference today. And that probably means that it's going to be a back five, because he has certainly used the media to try to communicate a message that he wants to get out there in the past. And that's fine. Like, I'm here for it. And I'm sorry for saying this. I highly doubt anyone for the Philadelphia Union is going to be listening to this podcast. But I think that it's the kind of gamemanship that you need, right? It's like that kind of, if it's a small, tiny advantage, fine. Like, if you have to like have some guy that can barely walk in training in full gear for a few seconds so you get photos of him, fine, right? Like, you do those things if it can help, get in somebody's head. But it does seem like a back five would be what he's hinting at, and it would make a certain amount of sense, considering just the number of strong attacking players that this Philadelphia Union has.
That makes sense. I mean, when you asked that initially, like, what would make more sense, the back three or back four, back five, I was thinking, we don't have Andre Franco. So again, who was probably one of the most important factors, if not the most important factor, to the back three. And then I'm thinking, after Tim mentioned that he's going to say, oh, it's probably going to, he'll hint to a back four and then all of a sudden he'll change it up. I mean, he's changed it up a few times on us already. So I wouldn't be surprised if he'll change it up again. So that way, different strategies might work, and maybe he'll even be able to change it mid-game depending on how well the game is going. Thinking about the fact that it's a very short turnaround, so maybe he wants the midfield and the back line to do a bit more of the heavy lifting in comparison to the forward, so that way they can run forward.
There's certainly more rotation depth, right, in those two player positions. Like, there are capable players that did not get minutes,
like Tom Starlow
on Wednesday. Well, I mean, that's the one forward, right? But like, it's him. But like, we've seen Zinkernagel. We've seen, basically Bamba gets subbed off early, but Zinkernagel and Hugo have gone 90 minutes so many times, and like, it's a very significant change of the way the team plays when you bring in Tom Barlow, and like, if you put somebody else in, like you put Marin in where Zink is for the times that we've seen that, right? The team has depth in the midfield, and now they've got, an additional center back that I think has proven that he's, an MLS quality starter. And so there's guys that, could maybe use a run out in a different way than just, playing the same attacking players 90 minutes when they're already tired and played almost 90 minutes on Wednesday.
I kind of want to push back a little bit, not on that last point, just going back to the formation talk. I think this is a back four game, and I think it's going to be very similar to what we saw against Orlando. Not in like the results, right? I don't expect the Fire to dominate, but what I do expect is we are bringing the game to you. Like, we are moving the ball forward. We are getting in your zone. Jay Davila is going to be incredibly aggressive in Philadelphia's half, winning the ball back to keep the pressure on them, because the only thing that really keeps the press off your back line is if your back line is the one holding the ball. And I think to your point earlier about how Philadelphia plays and the style of team they are, if you can get a goal early, I think all of a sudden the tenor of that game changes very quickly. I don't think Philadelphia chases well. And now you can walk into Soldier Field with a chance to end the series, get a week off. And that's, I think if the Fire enter this game hoping to squeak one out, they will lose. I don't think that's an unreasonable thing to say. I think, guys, tell me if I'm crazy here. Can I one last
crazy.
piece of this? Because I think
you're crazy. I don't know if what you're about to say is crazy though, but just in general, yes, you should probably see
after listening to you and Matt trying to make the Starman Zinkernagel song. Yeah, you're crazy.
No, look, I think this might sound insane. I think there's a reasonable case to be made that Chicago Fire are a more talented team than Philadelphia Union. I think when you go bar for bar, individual player abilities, I think there's a case.
I don't think that there's much of a case that that's not the case. If I'm being honest with you,
yeah.
I mean, now again, the Union has some good players, but again, what they have is people that are 100% bought into a system that more or less does really well at taking players that have a certain talent level and getting the most out of them, even if it can lead to burnout after they've had to run 5,000 more miles than anybody else on another team.
And to that point, if you can come out and punch them in the face 15 minutes into a game, I think that really throws things off.
Now, here's though the big difference, I think, between what the Union are going to show and what versus what Orlando showed. They, in general, have a much younger team. I mean, well, they don't have a Luis Muriel who's
They
like
can keep
near
up.
40. Then yes, and a very young team and a team that like plays with that intensity. Brian Gutierrez and Sergio Orahel were not getting pressed that hard at all for the vast majority of that game. The weakest that the Union are likely to press for any given part of that game is going to be at like harder than what they saw against Orlando. I mean, not night and day harder, but it's an entirely different beast, I think, when you look at it on the whole. And so the fact that the Fire were able to control that game in the midfield against Orlando, I don't think says a lot about the team's ability to do so against the Union. And the thing that you don't want is for, say, like Brian Gutierrez, Sergio Orahel, but neither of whom are going to win a ton of physical battles for you, especially if they lose the ball, getting railroaded early on, and then it just kind of goes downhill from there. I think Alan made a really good point, though, about, we've seen the team switch partway through a game. And then there's also the fact that, like, look, it is a 3-game series. I don't think that you try to throw the first game at all because that's incredibly silly. But I think that it's fair to say that you can try something that you think might work and hope that the guy's confidence and adrenaline and all that, because it's also a short rest, is going to be enough to overcome and get a result. And if it does not, you can try something very different in the second game. And you haven't, it starts 0-0 again.
And that to me is where I think that aggression is going to be key, because you're right. Sergio Orahel and Brian Gutierrez are not these incredibly physical players, although I do think Sergio is better in terms of his strength on the ball than maybe we give him credit for sometimes.
And he's been getting stronger throughout the past couple of years, especially.
And I don't mean his ability to bench press. I just mean his ability to maintain possession, right? He's very solid in that way. I do think there is an aspect of, again, you can use that to your advantage, right? If you are getting aggressive and going forward, the amount of times that is going to be called a foul, you're going to get a free kick, you're going to get a set piece instead of the referee letting the whistle play because you're in your own half. He's not going to call it there, right? Things to that event. I think the aggression will pay dividends if you have, frankly, the gumption to take it. And then the question becomes, can you capitalize, right? And that brings us to, I think, what is maybe the most interesting matchup of this game is you've got 2 Defender of the Year nominees on the back line going against a newcomer of the year, a guy who scored 19 goals if you're including the playoffs, and a guy who's making $5 million a year as a forward in MLS as a designated player. And it's a little bit of unstoppable force meets immovable object in some ways. Andre Blake also sitting in goal for Philadelphia Union, although Andrew Rick didn't seem to have too many troubles the last time they faced off either. And I guess the question is, let's say all things go well. Tim, do you see either the set piece game or just the run of play going in the favor of the Fire in that attacking third?
I think that that's one of the things you're hoping for. I mean, again, the Union style very much is they will fight very hard to win every corner, to, make throw-ins happen. That's that DNA that I keep on talking about. If you've seen a game from their academy, the 13-year-olds, if a guy manages to see a ball out to win a throw-in for their team, the kids on the bench cheer like he just scored a goal, right? And so they are going to be doing that. I think that the Union will certainly have more than their fair share of set piece opportunities. I think that the Fire need to be clinical with the ones that they have, which the nice thing is they have been pretty clinical throughout the year with it, right?
Yeah.
But again, it's going, I think that it just is matching the intensity, despite the tired legs that the Fire will have by comparison. They do have an extra day versus when we've seen Wednesday, Saturday has been normally the schedule. Greg said that extra day is a huge benefit in terms of recovery, and it's an away game, but Philadelphia is a short flight, so that does help the team as well.
I like the talk about especially set pieces, because we've seen games where the Fire have either kept it close or have gone ahead just purely from set pieces. I can't remember what game it was recently where it felt like the Fire were unable to do anything. Oh no, I think it was a Toronto game where it felt like the Fire were very much unable to do anything from open play, but from dead ball, it was just chef's kiss. So like Tim mentioned, if the Fire are able to take whatever opportunity is given to them, whether it's a free kick, corner, or even something better, do it. Especially as as one of the teams in MLS that's been honestly one of the best in terms of dead balls. Kill them.
I think that we have to be realistic about the fact that like those things happen. Like you don't just randomly get corners, right?
No,
like you don't randomly get free kicks in dangerous places. You have to be in dangerous places and be doing dangerous things to win those opportunities. And again, that just requires matching that intensity.
So the other question I would have, right, Tim, you talked a bit about some of the physical matchups in midfield. Let's say, assuming a back four, right? Because I think in a back three, we all know it's going to be Brian Gutierrez and Jay Davila. Although, feel free to tell me if you disagree. Who are you seeing as your starting midfielders going into this game, given whatever strategy you feel Greg is employing? Because I think that's really the only space we'll see something different outside of potentially a formation switch.
So, assuming a back four, which is that what you want? Is like for me to assume that because that's not.
You
my
just tell me who you think
know?
Is starting in midfield and the formation they are doing it in.
Okay, so I think it's probably going to be some variation of five in the back with probably two midfielders. I think Jay Davila is going to be one of the two midfielders. I think the other, we've seen a lot of rotation. I personally think that Brian Gutierrez has earned another start just with his play in the last match, which no disrespect to anyone that we saw in the midfield at different points of the last game, especially Sergio Orahel, who started alongside of him. But I just think that it's getting that goal, being a leader with his actions in a way we hadn't seen, I think is something that would be really good. Again, there's a possibility he could get run over with it. And I think that that's a danger, but there's not a perfect midfielder for the Fire in this group. There just isn't.
Yeah, the departure of Andre Franco has definitely left a sizable hole in the squad. And we've often talked a lot about, since Franco's departure, we've talked a lot if Guti can handle it. And I think more and more we've seen that the answer is yes, he can. The question for me now is, can he do it on a short turnaround? Maybe a little bit better to what we saw going from Miami to Toronto, if he's able to pull a short turnaround. And then again, like I mentioned, we've seen Greg pull out different formations, different strategies, like either by halftime or a little bit. So it's entirely possible you might see like an earlier sub, probably a lot earlier than what we saw against Orlando, in my personal opinion.
So actually, that's kind of a question that I was wondering in my head of like, when we've seen the Fire, it's going to be game state dependent, right? But like we've seen the Fire switch tactics when it looks like something isn't working, but the game is within easy reach. And I feel like if it's really catastrophically not working, like against Toronto, I mean, Toronto was not going to score, 3-4 goals and a half on you just with the way they've been playing. Like they're just not at that level, I think, in a way that the Union maybe are. And so I think with it being a 3-game series, like at what point do you say, we'll try something for half and maybe try digging ourselves out of this hole to try to get the result versus let's see if we can turn this around the way that we're like sticking to our guns now and come out with something different next week to preserve the element of surprise, to have guys with fresher legs or whatever else, or because like you just don't want to break the glass in case of emergency when you're not yet facing elimination in the game. I honestly don't know. Like maybe if it's like you're down 1-0 or you're up 1-0, that's a different answer than if it's 2-0 or 3-0. Like there might be some dividing line. I don't know where I would draw it, and I'm not sure where Greg would draw it either.
I think that comes down more to performance than scoreline, right? And I think maybe that's somewhere that we would agree, right? Is if you're down 2-0, but it's an own goal and a fluke, that's very different than it's 0-0, but you you're getting dog walked in every facet of the game. Chris Brady's just made a couple saves, right? And I think in that way, it's a little more game state dependent than it is scoreline dependent.
Well, at the same time, it doesn't matter if you're down, 4-0 because an Eagle came out of nowhere, snatched the ball and threw it in the back of the net, 4 times.
Okay, that's interference. That has to come back. They need to look at that, Tim. Okay, they need to take it to the monitor. This is insane. PRO has gone too far, letting Eagles score goals.
We all know that VAR and MLS has been continually invaluable, and always the referees always go to the monitor when they should, and then the VAR never gets the call wrong. There becomes a point where it doesn't really matter how well you think you're playing. Like if the math is against you, the math is against you, and I think that's you take the lessons from that. And again, if you think you're playing well, why are you changing formations? Right? Like you wouldn't want to.
And that's the idea. I think you can gain more from a game you're playing well and losing than you can from panic switch. Now it's even worse. Morale's down. You don't even have another club in the bag because that didn't work either.
Well, and I think that's the thing. No matter what, the Fire need to not panic. Again, because you can't be eliminated tomorrow. And I think that the Union have the experience. A lot of the guys were there for the MLS Cup run in 2022. It's about not panicking no matter what the game state is, because panicking is not going to help you. And neither is, starting to, raise something from the rafters because you're up a few goals and then letting your focus slip for a second, because I think that both sides would agree that the other side is the kind of team that can punish you for it.
No, that's well put. And look, I know we talked about the Fire's, I think, general lack of experience, right? The one kind of caveat I would give to some of that is like you do have Jack Elliott, who was on that MLS Cup run with Philadelphia Union. You've Kellen Acosta on the bench, who I wouldn't be shocked if we saw a healthy dose of Kellen Acosta at some point in this game.
If this isn't a Kellen Acosta game, I don't know what a Kellen Acosta game is for Greg Berhalter.
Exactly. And Alan and DJ, I realized I didn't get your guys' midfield ideas, so please hit me with them.
Davila and Gutierrez or Hell. I think that's genuinely that's probably your best bet, alongside just going, okay, we can rotate. If we need to go more defensive, you bring on Pineda, you bring on Acosta, you bring on like one of them. If you need to go more offensive, I guess you could probably bring Marin on and move Zink into the midfield.
Interesting. I hadn't really thought of it like that. Alan, what do you think of midfield-wise?
To start it out, I imagine that the Fire are going to do what John said, go guns a-blazing. And what worked in terms of guns a-blazing the last game, that was Jay Davila, Brian Gutierrez. Now, depending on how the game is going, whether it's a change of strategy or maybe rest or, God forbid, anything worse, we might see an earlier substitution, as I mentioned. But I think to start, definitely for the first half and then some, I think, again, Guti has proven that he can sort of fill in the boots for Franco and Jay Davila with the adversity that he's faced, especially at the beginning of his tenure, the little oopsie-doopsie on decision day. He's proven that he can absolutely be a bully as well. Even though when you look at like his pictures and his smile, it's like that doesn't look like a mean guy, but then he's going to absolutely get rid of the ball from your feet.
Then he's going to elbow you in the head. Somebody needs to start a drinking game where you just take a shot every time Alan says oopsie-doopsie.
Speaking of adversity and boo-boos, I guess, if we're going for like baby words, we didn't talk about the way Jack Elliott looked at the press conference today.
Oh, yeah.
The man looks like he got attacked by a bear.
Yeah, but you should see the bear.
Oh, my days.
Tough look for Captain Jack. Very tough look.
Yeah.
I'm saying spend enough time in West Virginia where I feel like Jack Elliott could handle himself in those situations.
He's fine.
He said it was mostly cosmetic, which is like, I'm like, good, because you look hard as heck right now. Like in a going hard way, not in a, the way
let's go back to the point I was making before, which is the Fire, albeit lacking MLS playoff experience against a Philadelphia side that has plethoras of it, important note, right? You do have Jack Elliott, you do have Joel Waterman, Andrew Gutman. I don't think has had much experience in the playoff. You have a trio of guys up front who have seen European football. You have Philip Zinkernagel, who was promoted in back-to-back years out of the English Championship, which it's insane that that's the first time that's ever been mentioned on this show
Champo
because
mentioned.
how many players can say they've done that? Um, I think maybe we're selling ourselves short a little bit. Is all I'll say. Tim got a sigh because I mentioned the championship, but that's fine.
Yeah. Two different championship teams too, without naming either, which is even like that's like a masterstroke.
Watford and Nottingham Forest.
I think that it's really important to say that like the team has a lot of guys that have experienced big games, and this is different in a way, like the fact that it's this knockout format and stuff like that, like avoiding relegations, some teams go through a playoff for that. It's not really the same when it's like two teams that were bad all year duking it out versus two teams that were good all year duking it out. But between that national team, there's a lot of guys that have played in big moments. It's just not entirely the same format. And, it's keeping that in your head and not being overwhelmed by the moment too, which I think Greg Berhalter did a really good job preparing the team for against Orlando. And maybe that does do a lot to settle some nerves, even if Orlando's a very different opponent.
Well put. Fellas, I think that puts us in a good spot and where I'd like to go from here. I'd like to actually introduce a new name for our favorite segment. And that is the segment where we ask the questions that need to be asked because they're questions that beg to be questioned. So you may have formerly known this as our X Factor segment. I changed it. Executive decision. I didn't run this by anybody. So Tim, I'm going to start with you. Who you got and who's your spark? Because fire.
Hey-o.
Pretty good. Pretty good.
Round of applause, please.
I may seem naive for this. I'm going to say Fire 2-1. It's going to be a close game no matter what, I think. And I think we all probably feel that. And I'm going to say Philip Zinkernagel. We have seen what a difference maker he can be. He obviously was not in the two games against the Union before. He'd be kind of like facing off against probably Kai Wagner and Olwethu Markanya, right? And those are both two very good defenders, but Zinkernagel can take on defenders. I think what we need to see from him is not trying to do too much at once, because that's something that I think a lot of the Fire's offense, as skilled and talented as they are, have been guilty of doing one too many touches rather than taking the shot that's available to them, especially, or finding the pass. And I think sometimes everyone has been guilty of trying to find a pass rather than just taking a shot. Andre Blake is a really good goalie. He's been more and more valuable over the past couple of seasons as he's aged. And, Zinkernagel is a guy that can punish him for it. And he, had a decent game, but didn't end up getting a goal, didn't end up appearing in the box score. So I think he's earned it.
Yeah. Alan, who you got and who's your spark?
I said, because I love to be the optimist of the group and I love me some goals. I said 3-2. I think the Fire are going to go into Chester, Pennsylvania, guns a-blazing. Of course, the Union are the Shield winners for a reason, but I think the Fire can hold out, push through. And in terms of my spark, I said Hugo Kuipers because I was rewatching the game and I was thinking about what John said about how it seemed like his spark came back. Like you could see it in the way it seemed he was relieved. You could see that he was really just excited to score again and to really make a difference for the team. So I think he's going to take that energy, take that excitement and give it to them in Chester,
and honestly,
Pennsylvania.
We've talked about how intense the Union can be, how hard they work. No one on the pitch is going to outwork Hugo Kuipers.
He is a workhorse.
And you basically know
that. Yeah. Well put. DJ, who you got and who is your spark?
I'm going to go against the grain. I'm going to say that Philadelphia probably is going to win probably 2-1 or maybe 3-1 if the Fire go pure offense like they did against NYCFC. However, I'm going to say I think at the end of the day, the entire game is going to come down to Chris Brady. Because if Brady plays out of his mind, he will immediately have Brady can play the best game of his entire life on Sunday, and that will literally win the Fire the game. And another thing too, I want to point something out. I said before we started that there was an autism coming. If the Fire can win a game, they can win any of the games, like either today, Sunday, or next Saturday. It'll be the first time in 22 years they've won 2 playoff games.
Gosh.
Yeah.
So
You gotta.
This is also the first road playoff game since 2009. There's lots of things. But it sounds like, all of us looking at the score predictions are predicting a game that is close and the scoreline is close. So not like the last 2 times these 2 teams have met. I don't know about you. Like, I think that says a lot of good things about the way the Fire should feel about things going into Bridgeview next Saturday. I think that if it's close, one way or the other, if it's a win, I think that gives them a lot of confidence. I think if it's a close and they fall short, I think it becomes crunch time and they can show what lessons they learned from it in a week. And I think that that's what this year has been about, right? Is learning lessons and then putting it on the pitch. And it hasn't always been smooth, but this is the biggest test for that in the season. And it's coming at the time when that test should be coming.
It's only going to get bigger and bigger tests, honestly, from here on out. And they've passed a lot of the quizzes and tests that the Eastern Conference, that MLS has put in front of them. It's definitely been a lot harder considering that the amount of progress the Union has made over the last few years, that the Eastern Conference has made over the last few years. But just seeing what Triple G has done, what his staff has done, what this team has done, heck, what the supporters have done. It's a whole new ball game in Chicago.
Yeah. No, I've got just to tie a cap on it, right? I've got Fire 2-1. I think Jay Davila is the most important player on the field come Sunday. If he can continue to be a disruptive force in the attacking half, just in terms of winning the ball back and maintaining possession, I think that's what turns this game on its head. And Tim, to your point, I think if you this is, I think, the best way I can say it. No player on the team for Philadelphia has seen what was brought to SeatGeek on Wednesday night. In Chicago, I mean to say, when they play, you're used to playing Chicago Fire in a stadium that's too big with supporter section that isn't united, and you're not used to hearing a crowd that actually impacts the game. I think if this game goes back to SeatGeek with the Fire having a game in hand, I think it ends in SeatGeek. So I think Greg's going to come out aggressive. So I'm going 2-1 Fire, and I think if that's the case, we've got a real chance for an advancement.
And Jay, to your point, the Jay Davila they played against has become a much better player since then and a more consistent player. Yeah.
You've taken a guy who was a liability to a guy who is, I said it in the recap, I think by the end of next season, we're talking about him as maybe the best defensive midfielder in MLS. I think that's on the table, right? If not the best, certainly the best young player. He is, the tools are all there. It's just about putting them together consistently, which he has been. And fellas, I think that is as good a place to wrap it up unless we have anything else we want to add last second here. I'm seeing blank faces and thumbs up, and also Alan's here. Hey, Alan.
See you at the Fire pitch.
Yeah. So again, thanks for saying that, Alan. Catch us this Sunday. We'll be at the Endeavor Health Fire pitch live, doing a little bit of pregame talk, a little bit of a watch along. If you can't make it to the Fire pitch, you can also tune into our YouTube channel, menofred97.com, menofred97 on YouTube. We'll be doing a live watch along that'll be broadcast there. So if you can't make it, you can still watch with us. So please join one way or the other if you're able to. If you're able to come out live, it would be a pleasure.
I will not be there.
Yeah, DJ lives in Florida, so he won't be there. DJ.
The Gators I needed to use got sidetracked.
Yeah, but if you're able to join us at the Endeavor Health Fire pitch, please do. If you're not, join us on YouTube. Even if you can't watch with folks around you, you can be a part of the community in that way. And I think that's really cool and a lot of fun. Again, alumni from the Fire, a DJ, a bunch of really cool stuff. Like I mentioned before, Alex Campbell from CHGO will be joining us as well. So it'll be a great day on Sunday to hopefully celebrate a Chicago Fire victory. And as always, Give us a follow on social media, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, Men in Red 97, anywhere and everywhere that matters. And wherever you're listening to this, like, rate, subscribe, share, send it to your mom. She'll be like, thanks for sharing your interests with me, sweetie. I love you and I'm proud of you. That's really important to hear from your parents every now and then, guys. And if they don't say it, we are. We're very proud.
Text your parents.
Keep on keeping on. Thank you so much for being here, for joining us around the bonfire. For Tim, for Alan, and for DJ, and our illustrious producer, Austin. We hope to see you Sunday. And come on, you Men in Red.